How's it going, guys? And welcome to the showdown between Bretonnia, led by King Lewin, and Musion, who's going to be led by the Red Duke. So guys, let's jump right into this match and take a look at some of these builds. So on the front line, I do have a couple of groups of Battle Pilgrims, because in this game, I wanted to have a very heavy cav build. You can see on both sides of my formation, I do have two groups of Grail Knights, one here, and they're definitely pretty strong. I think they do lose to Blood Knights 1-1, but they do have more weapon strength, and I think they do have a little bit of a better charge bonus. Let's see, so they have 82, and the Blood Knights on their charge bonus have 78. So I think the Blood Knights would win 1-1, but if we're supporting with King Lewin and using the Sword of Corone and also Lore of Life, I think we should be in pretty good shape. So again, we do have a very heavy cap build, two groups of Grail Knights. We have the Pegasus Knights up in the air. And the Royal Pegasus Knights, I just kind of brought as a bit of a contingent for King Lewin. So if my opponent had gone with like a Zombie Dragon and two Terror guys, King Lewin would have been munched on pretty badly. So just to kind of make that battle a little bit tougher for my opponent, I decided to bring some Royal Pegasus Knights. And of course, the Vampire Counts don't really have any ways for like shooting up in the air with missile units, so the Pegasus Knights should be somewhat safe, and hopefully I can get them into favorable matchups. But again, in investing so much in my cav, I mean, Grail Knights cost 1,500 apiece. I think the Royal Pegasus Knights cost like 1,600. So you guys can see I have a very, very small infantry core. So I'm going to need to get that really good battlefield control with my Knights and hopefully be able to pull it out from there. So the Battle Pilgrims are going to be supported by the Grail Reliquae, two groups of the Peasant Bowmen with the Fire Arrows, and I mainly bring these guys to focus down units that are weak to fire, like Mortis Engines. So Mortis Engines, if I'm not mistaken, let's go ahead and double check just to be sure. Pretty much anything that has regenerating is going to be, taking extra fire damage. So yes, this is going to be taking an additional 20% from those Fire Arrows. So we'll see if they pay their dues, and that's pretty much it for my army, guys. King Lewin does have the Sword of Corone, which is going to be really good against the Blood Knights, because Grail Knights do have a really nice anti-large bonus, but they also don't have the best armor-piercing values. So if King Louis can get in there and drop his Sword of Corone, which is going to lower their armor by 30 and their melee defense by 27, they should be able to perform very well. So for my opponent, he does have two groups of Blood Knights here, which, are pretty good in this matchup. I mean, Blood Knights can really kind of overwhelm, the Bretonnian cav if, they're supported with Invocation to Heck and Zombie Summons to kind of surround the enemy Knights and break their charges. And they're just very, a strong pick, and they can honestly charge down most Bretonnian infantry like Foot Squires and Battle Pilgrims. They're just a very solid cav unit. This is the one thing that was a very bold move, Cotton. Or bold strategy, I should say, and I don't know if it's going to work out. So he does have the Chill guys here, which are these Hex Race. They have really good armor-piercing values, cause Fear and Terror, which is going to be okay against Bretonnian infantry. But Battle Pilgrims are immune to Psychology. Against Foot Squires, they'd probably do okay, and Questing Knights they would perform well against, but against the Grail Knights, and this is kind of like the thing that's working out well for me in this matchup so far, at least in the the army selection phase, is that the Grail Knights are not something you see terribly often. So a lot of people are going to feel safe bringing the Chill guys because you're just going to be expecting like Questing Knights and maybe some other things like that, or Halberds to kind of defend your flanks. But the Chill guys are definitely in some trouble because the magic damage from these Grail Knights and Royal Pegasus Knights is going to be huge. So aside from that, my opponent's army is just going to be skeletons. I think it's mostly fodder. Yeah, it looks like it's just kind of a bit of a zombie swarm because he invested so much in his cav, just like I did. So it turned out to be a very cav-heavy game. So zombies and skeletons, he does have the Mortis Engine. He has the Red Duke atop Hellsteed, so he's going to be pretty quick. King Lewin most certainly will not be able to catch him. And it looks like he does have two groups of Fellbats. Most likely he was looking to shut down my archers with these Fellbats. So we'll see how it goes. And without further ado, guys, let's get this show on the road. So my Pegasus Knights are going to be flying around kind of looking for an opportunity to strike, but my opponent, very well played. He realized he was a little bit exposed over here as my Grail Knights did approach, so he's going to posture up near his army, so he does have that support. I'm going to fly overhead with the Pegasus Knights. I am taking a little bit of damage from that Mortis Engine, but I was like, hey, let's just kill these Fellbats. It's going to be pretty much a free kill. You can see the Fellbats are getting lanced out of the air by the Knights of Bretonnia, and King Lewin is going to be in hot pursuit of the Red Duke. So they should be able to clean these guys up in 10 or 15 seconds. You can see the initial charge just absolutely massacres those Fellbats. And this is actually something a lot of people don't know about Fellbats. They actually have really good melee defense, so they didn't go down as quickly as I thought. These guys have 44. Yeah, they both have 44, obviously, without chevrons. But this is going to be it. The Rohirrim are preparing to charge over here on the flanks. The Knights of Bretonnia with their glorious return to a ranked battle. We're going to charge in right here and have a very cinematic, glorious charge. And you can see the Knights are just going to lance right into those Chill guys, which is going to be so incredibly bad for my opponent. Just massive, massive magic damage, as well as a huge charge bonus of 82. And the other Knights on the other side of the formation are going to be colliding with two Blood Knights. So this is going to be a very, very rough gambit for the Knights of Bretonnia on this side. They're going to get enveloped a little bit by superior numbers. So this is going to be quite a battle. So you can see the Chill guys here just get pounded. These guys are down to 25 models. Magic damage from the Grail Knights doing huge work. And I do pop an Earthblood over here to kind of hold things down. And King Lewin's also going to jump in and lend his armor piercing. The stand your ground is going to give them melee defense, making them, exponentially more durable. So hopefully it'll go pretty well for the Knights of Bretonnia over here. You can see his Chill guys have taken a ton of damage, but also my Grail Knights have taken a ton of work. And this is a pretty good tactic. Anytime you're fighting elite cav, always summon zombies like on top of them. The zombies will kind of screw up the AI, and a lot of those attacks, rather than going on Blood Knights, are going to be wasted on zombies. So very well played to my opponent there. In the mainline fight, the Mortis Engine has just been getting wailed on by these peasant archers, and what I would have recommended for my opponent is probably to grab these skeleton warriors, and instead of kind of just piling them on the middle, pull them up and through this flank and try and get back here into the back line. I probably still would have been able to stop it using these halberds as well as my damsel over here, but still, that would have put a lot more pressure on me. You can see the Mortis engine is taking some pretty heavy work. It's at about 1700 HP, and that is a lot of arrow fire. And you can see it's massive damage. And I mean, for how much you're paying for those peasant bowmen, that is really, really good value. So, my opponent and I both realized this was the part of the battlefield where we really both needed to win. So I do pull in my Pegasus Knights after they finish those Fellbats. We get a huge surround. You can just see the chivalrous Knights of Bretonnia have just surrounded the Knights of Red Keep and are definitely doing some pretty huge damage. You can see this one group of Blood Knights is pretty close to crumbling down. They're at 27 models. The other one is still very healthy though. But thankfully, Royal Pegasus Knights, if they're not being focused by the Blood Knights, can do huge damage. They have 61 weapon strength and a bonus for large. So I get that surround, and some of my peasant arrows are going to be firing over there. Probably not the best idea, but I figured, hey, he has zombies, he has skeletons, he has some other fodder units. Let's just shoot in here and see what we can do. So the Red Duke right here is going to start taking a very heavy beating from King Lewin. King Lewin is obviously going to be a much superior duelist when he's on Bequois, and the Duke is on the Hellseed. So he's trying to escape here, so I pull some of these Grail Knights right here and try and screen him out. I charge in, but for some reason when I was charging, they were doing like these weird laps instead of actually attacking him. So I do also pull in my Damsel. So the Damsel is going to be, karate chopping. What does she actually have? I think she has like a staff, like a little pimp staff or something like that. But she's able to intercept him for a moment, but my opponent getting some really good healing with Invocation of Neck. In the front line, the Battle Pilgrims of Bretonnia doing very good, and I mean, against fodder, they're going to be in their element. They don't have enough armor piercing to really deal with Graveguard, but against skeletons and zombies and things like this, things like that, they're going to do a really, really good job for you. So you can see the fire arrows are coming over and roasting some of these zombies. Probably a little bit of friendly fire, but I would say the archers have been, pretty accurate henceforth. So as far as this part of the battlefield, the Battle Pilgrims have taken a little bit of damage, but honestly, they're not going to be breaking anytime soon, and they definitely are performing very well. So pretty much all of the marbles in the match are going to be taking place over here with the Blood Knights and these other troops. And it looks like the Knights of Bretonnia, with the assistance of their king, have been able to do pretty well. So 26 models on these Grail Knights, these other ones over here, these Royal Pegasus Knights are down to 13. So despite the fact that they rear charged those Blood Knights, they still took a ton of damage. Blood Knights are just absolute beasts. I think one of the things that really cost my opponent this game is the chill guys. It's a very, very, tough choice for sure. I do get a nice little charge over here. My Bretonnia Knights are able to kind of just slam into the back of these fodder units. So I was able to just clean up, with, most of the troops over there. And I was like, I didn't really need all of those guys over there just kind of, tar pitting those Blood Knights. I pretty much had that under control. So I figured now was a good time to come in here and just kind of clean up these fodder units. So these guys definitely are one of the coolest looking units when they're charging, which is those glowing lances just coming in. It just looks so cool. I mean, I really wish that the Bretonnia Knights were a little bit more competitive in like some of the, against Lizardmen and some factions like that. I mean, I feel like they just heavily underperform for their cost. But they're still really badass. So we'll give you guys a little bit of charge action coming in. The skeletons are going to be sent flying by these heroic Knights of Bretonnia as they charge in and just collapse them. And, that rear charge there is going to set their leadership to probably like -20, -30. They're going to start crumbling down pretty quick. So the front line's going pretty well for me. You can see the Grail Reliquae and the Battle Pilgrims are going to be cleaning up the zombies, and it looks like everything for my opponent is going to be disintegrating here. He does have the Red Duke somehow still alive. I think the Duke is kind of lurking over here. Where is he at? He's kind of in the shadows. Yes, he's flying overhead. He did get some really good zombie summons in the back line, so very well played to my opponent. He was able to summon these zombies and kind of fend off my archers, but it was too little too late. I think if he had done like a bombing run with the Duke early on, so he uses the Duke, he flies over, he drops a couple zombies, and then goes and fights over there with the Cav, that would have been much better. Because my peasant bowmen were able to just fire the entire time. Granted, the Red Duke was being very heavily pressured by the Pegasus Knights as well as King Lewin, and ultimately they were able to pull it out. So a little bit of attrition here as we kill some zombies and some other kind of fodder units, but definitely a very fun game. I mean, anytime you can make the Knights of Bretonnia work, it can, it can be very exciting. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think one of the reasons I was able to take that game, relatively, I mean, it was still, there were some, dicey moments with the Blood Knight charge and all that kind of stuff, but one of the reasons we were able to really take it was because the chill guys went down so quick. And I mean, that was a huge investment. If that had been like a third group of Blood Knights, I still think I would have been able to pull it out, but it would have been a much, much harder fight. Like, that would have been extremely tough. I did also have some halberds with polearms coming over to assist my knights, so that would have been pretty helpful. And honestly, had he had 3 Blood Knights, I probably would have just pulled back and used the halberds to kind of screen for them and, get that really advantageous engagement. But yeah, it was definitely a fun build. I don't know if I would call it competitive. It just happened to work out based on what he brought. But had he brought like a zombie dragon and 2 Terrorgeists, I could have probably outmaneuvered them with the King Lewin and the Pegasus Knights. And as soon as those Terrorgeists then landed to engage my Cav and other high value targets, I could have then countercharged them with the Royal Pegasus Knights and King Lewin. So I think that would have been relatively safe. I think he needed to be summoning more zombies, maybe getting like a Necromancer if the Red Duke's going to be mostly kind of flying around. But yeah, having some zombies pressuring my archers would have been huge because he took him 2 major hits very early in the game. The Chill Geist went down, the Mortis Engine went down to just those 2 Peasant Bowmen with fire arrows. They were like left completely unimpeded, so I think that was definitely pretty important there. So yeah, As far as his army goes, I like the zombie skeleton hordes. They're pretty fun, but again, it was very heavily contingent on that Mortis engine. The Blood Knights are pretty good. I think they're a decent pick, but I still think the Chillgeist is a little bit too risky to bring against Bretonnia. Granted, I mean, a lot of Bretonnian meta builds now are just going to be like men-at-arms and battle pilgrims and foot squires and more of like an infantry style build. So perhaps against that, it would have been a little bit tougher. So very well played to my opponent, Guillemot. I'm not even going to try and say that. So very well played, man. It was quite a bit of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the Knights of Bretonnia return to their triumphant glory. And guys, I got a lot more content coming soon.